Zealand is a bird watcher's paradise. Its breathtaking countryside boasts a spectacular variety of feathered creatures.
Whoa! Oh, look at her go. Essentially, you don't have to be a bird nerd to love this place.
Oh, absolutely. It can be quite a spiritual trip to come out here and just to sit and be quiet and to listen.
But this South Pacific nation has one of the worst extinction records on Earth.
We've lost about a third of our bird species, and the decline is still ongoing. If we let it roll for another 50 years, there won't be much left to restore.
Rats and other introduced predators have decimated the native bird population. Now New Zealand is leading the world with an extraordinary goal to wipe out the country's worst pests by 2050.
This is marvellous. This is excellent to get a stoke this size.
101 East travels to New Zealand to see the battle to save the country's unique bird life. Mount Taranaki looms large over the majestic forests of New Zealand's North Island. Beneath the volcanic peak, a team of conservationists head deep into Rotokauri Scenic Reserve. They're hunting for a native bird that is a symbol of New Zealand, the kiwi.
There are more than 260 kiwi birds in this reserve. Hopefully, we're going to get our hands on one.
The bird will then be released into an area where kiwi populations have been destroyed. Local ranger Chris Dodd is a master at searching for this small flightless bird in its scrubby, hilly habitat.
How long does it take you to find some of these birds?
It can range from 20 minutes to 3 hours, 4 hours, yeah.
The nocturnal bird has a tracker on it, but it's still a tricky endeavour to find her. Every day, this forager of the forest floor moves to a variety of different tree hollows and holes.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, that's a much stronger beep now. It's getting closer.
The radio transmitter picks up that the shy kiwi is about 400 metres away.
So how would I know if I heard one?
They've got a good long whistle, so it's like... I've actually got one on my phone, which makes it an awful lot easier.
Okay. I was impressed by that, though.
And they call about 15 times. The female's more of a... in response.
So quite a pleasant sound.
We go off track to find the kiwi.
We're right near the burrow, so we've got to be really quiet at this point.
But there's a hitch.
It's big. It's a big tree.
An hour goes by, the sun is setting, and their efforts to remove the bird from the tree are futile.
We had a really good search. They're really good climbers up on the inside of trees, and we'll come back tomorrow morning and hopefully it will have found a new spot tomorrow morning.
Alright, here we go. Second time lucky.
We've got a bigger hill to come now.
Early next morning, we trace the kiwi's steps to higher, rougher terrain.
We're hopefully closing in, hopefully.
I literally stumble along. But hey, no one said catching a kiwi would be easy.
So Jess and Kane have got a good idea where the bird is now. So they're just going to move into position. It's under there's a big fallen log.
Finally, after 2 days of searching, success. We meet our first kiwi.
Have you got legs?
Today, 2 kiwis have been caught for Rotokauri's special release program. This 230-hectare reserve protects endangered birds with an 8-kilometre perimeter fence that keeps pests out. Geographically isolated for 85 million years, New Zealand's birds evolved as ground-dwelling creatures in a predator-free world. But with human settlement came pests like rats that prey upon the birds' eggs and chicks.
It's interesting and really important to have these sites in New Zealand because no mammals are native. A lot of our native bird species have no real defences against the newly introduced species.
80% of New Zealand's bird species are endangered or at risk, including the kiwi. They're vulnerable to pests who kill an estimated 26 million birds every year. Kiwi living in the wild are easy targets because they don't fly and have a strong odour easily detected by predators.
They're a very easy meal for a stoat. So kiwi in the wild have just a 5% chance of survival from hatching to becoming an adult kiwi.
The goal at Rotokauri is to raise kiwis to an adult size, so they have a fighting chance when released into unprotected wilderness.
So a kiwi weighs about 1.5 kilograms. Is seen as being stoat-proof, as it can look after itself against some of the main predators.
Since people arrived in New Zealand more than 700 years ago, half of the nation's bird species have become extinct. To stop further decline, kiwi and other species are carefully managed in fenced reserves and conservation projects across the country.
It's almost like farming in a way. So you're moving birds from where they're doing really well into other areas where hopefully in the future they'll be able to continue doing well and breeding.
The forests around Mount Taranaki are sacred land for the country's indigenous communities. Before leaving Rotokauri, a Maori elder blesses the 2 kiwis as they move from one tribe's land to another. The birds arrive in their new home, Egmont National Park, where they're welcomed by custodians of the land.
So our kiwi have arrived safely, and so we're going to do a bit of a show and tell now.
Both birds will join 14 other kiwi released here in the last few months. It's a vital step in saving wild kiwi, which were almost wiped out across this region 2 decades ago. Maori leader Jamie Tuta says the birds hold great significance to Indigenous people.
We are the mountain is us, and so we have a responsibility to ensure that the health and well-being of our environment is at the centre of everything we do. Being able to return kiwi back to this place is important. I want the forest to be alive, so I want to hear birdsong again. I want my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren to experience that birdsong. Across New Zealand, school children learn how to build lures to trap pests that kill wildlife.
Do you know how many possums you've caught?
Some around 30-ish.
We've been out possum shooting and we've caught and we've gotten heaps.
Yep.
But we've seen on the sound lure camera like over 70.
From the coast to the cities, farms to the forests, traps are now a defining feature of New Zealand's stunning landscape. More than 5,000 registered community groups conduct pest control across the country. Including members of this car club who check traps in the ranges around New Zealand's capital, Wellington.
Today we're doing a standard run through the traps. We've got 130 out there.
They volunteer with a conservation group called Capital Kiwi. I'm on the road with one of these four-wheel drive enthusiasts, Barry Insel.
Grab the start.
Righto, Barry.
And let's go and have a look at this first trap.
Okay.
Rightio, let's open this up and see what's inside.
Nothing?
Nothing. Not a thing. The bait hasn't even been touched.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Hey, with the diminishing population, it has to be good.
It's encouraging to see after 2 years, most traps are empty and pest numbers are dropping. But I'm intrigued by Barry's tools.
Barry, barbecue tongs, I normally twirl sausages with these. How big are the critters that we're going to be picking up?
Have you ever tried pulling out an old rat or a hedgehog from a trap that's been in there for days? Not a good sight. Not a good sight. Come on, let's go.
All right.
Spaced 100 metres apart, with eggs or minced rabbit guts as a lure, traps catch pests in wilderness too dense and large for hunting.
Do I have to kind of put my fingers in my ears or anything? Like, what's the velocity?
Just keep your fingers back.
Barry shows me how these killing machines work.
The animal comes in, we've got a lure on the far side here.
Yep.
And you ready for this?
Oh my goodness.
And that's why I say, keep your fingers well away.
Yeah, I don't think they would survive a journey into there, that's for sure.
No.
Soon, we strike gold.
Trap number 5. Holy hang, what have we got there?
Look, is that a stoat?
That's a stoat, all right. Holy hang, look at the size of it.
So it's good to get this one snared.
Oh, definitely. Look, a stoat that size, that would decimate young kiwi chicks.
How satisfying is it to get a stoat in a trap?
Oh, that's tops. It really is. It's another step in the right direction.
5 years ago, New Zealand introduced a groundbreaking policy to wipe out all rats, possums and stoats by 2050. Trapping and volunteer groups play a role in saving a variety of critically endangered bird species. More than $200 million has been invested into this government program that brings together businesses, schools, universities, conservationists and farmers.
I think it is the first country that's doing it on such a wide basis to have a go at saving, conserving something that's so special. It's a real big, hairy, audacious goal.
Katie Milne is a leader at Predator Free 2050 Limited, a charitable company established by the government to carry out the mission. A former president of a farmers association, she says pests also harm farms because they can infect cattle with tuberculosis. Controlling the disease costs the taxpayer $42 million a year, so predator eradication is good for the economy, not just the greenies. Katie says they can achieve the goal by 2050 with greater investment in scientific research.
And that's going to be the key to helping drive out the last of these predators. There is nowhere else on the planet like this, and we now have the technology, the will and the know-how to do it and to protect those species, and we'd be fools not to have a go.
Yeah, Drew, this is the animal research facility.
Animal behaviourist Patrick Garvey studies predators so that the best tech can be developed to wipe them out in the wild. This research facility helps him and other scientists observe a range of pests at all hours of the day and night, like this stoat roused from his slumber.
Oh, they're quite noisy.
They are. It's being a little defensive now because it doesn't like us being this close to it.
What makes the stoat such a killing machine in New Zealand?
So they're voracious predators. It's only 350 grams, but it can kill animals 10 to 20 times its size. They have to eat a third of their body weight every day. I heard somebody jokingly, tongue-in-cheek, say before that if stoats were 30 kilograms, there'd be no humans on the planet. I suppose what makes it a great killer is that it can climb, it can swim, it can go underwater, it can be active day or night.
Scientists at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch are helping Patrick use smell to strengthen lures. They've built a scent library from dung to apples and identified odours that draw predators to a trap. One they can't resist, a ferret stench.
We discovered here that ferret odour really increases attraction. We've sent out ferret odour to 4 different trapping operations, and they increased their capture rates, doubled or tripled in many cases.
Patrick also psychologically evaluates stoats by testing them in mazes. After studying how they feed, fight and breed, Patrick has discovered each stoat has a distinct personality and behaviour pattern.
What we're doing at the moment is seeing how these pests respond to traps. When we try to control the population, we're quite successful. We'll always kill more than half the animals we'll be able to remove from the population. But there always is some individuals left at the end. And now that's what we're focused on. Which individuals won't interact with traps, won't eat the baits, and how do we, understanding these individuals, how does that make us better at targeting them?
Apart from outwitting smart pests, New Zealand's other big challenge is wiping out predators in remote wilderness areas. Al Bramley is finding ways to eradicate pests in tough terrain, only accessible by helicopter. He's the CEO of Zero Invasive Predators, or ZIP, which aims to wipe out pests in an area 100,000 hectares in size, among the glaciers, ramparts and rivers of the Southern Alps. Soon after landing at their research station, Al shows me the lie of the land.
So here we are, Drew. This is the river boundary that we use to defend the place, and this is the project area on this side. We call this the clean side, and this is the dirty side.
So all the possums, the rats, the stoats, they're on that side.
Yeah, we've got them.
Acting as a natural fence, rivers like this play a big role in ZIP's innovative projects across the valley.
Yeah, so this is a giant experiment, really. If we can prove it here, then we can kind of do it anywhere. At 10,000 hectares, 10 Ks by 10 Ks, we think if we can do it at this scale, we'll be able to do it pretty much anywhere.
On the clean side, ZIP often drops poison pellets to kill any pests living there.
Aerial baiting gets us into very tough terrain that we just can't walk around in. I don't think any of us like using an aerial toxin, but at the moment it's our only way of getting to zero in this really rugged country.
Out here, it's costly and difficult for humans to monitor pest control efforts. So ZIP built these artificial cameras that detect pests using a thermal and lure system. 200 of them are being set up in wilderness areas where predators have been eradicated to stop re-invasion.
And how does that help in pest eradication?
Well, most of the time this camera sees birds, it sees things we aren't interested in. But occasionally, if we get an incursion, these cameras will be the first early warning system. Basically, because things like rats breed so quickly, we need to know soon after they arrive so that we only have to deal with a few rats rather than hundreds of rats.
Using such technology, rangers can monitor offshore islands and remote wilderness areas from a distance.
It keeps an eye while the people aren't here, and it just means that we can do it a lot cheaper than having people do laps checking cameras that generally have just got native wildlife on it. This is a camera that hardly needs any servicing, and the batteries in here will probably last us the best part of nearly a year.
So far, around 10% of New Zealand's mainland has been subject to intensive predator control. So such innovations could help ramp up the war on pests.
So by moving to this technique, we'll be able to work bigger and bigger chunks of New Zealand. The grand plan is the government anticipates that we should be able to do predator freedom by 2050. But that means in about 5 years' time, we have to be doing 1 million hectares a year. There's three main challenges. Initially, we've got to work out how to get to zero, so we call that the removal phase. But once we're there, then we've got to be able to detect incursion reasonably quickly before the animals start breeding. And then we've got to do that removal phase again, where we respond to incursion, a little bit like with a special team that's just tasked with removing those few incursions.
For ZIP's projects to succeed, every section of the river needs to act as a strong barrier. To help identify weaknesses along the waterway, ZIP is tracking mice on the dirty side of the river, where they've set up automated lure dispensers.
So this device dispenses a little bit of mayonnaise that's got a dye in it, that when the animals eat the dye, they end up with their whisker tissue marked, so that we catch them later, we can identify them in the lab. We had to invent a way of marking the animals that gave us a long period, so that when they eventually cross and eventually we catch them, they've still got the marker in their system. So if a rat consumes a little bit of mayonnaise tonight with dye in it, 80 days later it'll still be on the end of its whisker.
If rats make it into the clean areas, there are special traps which quickly gas them to death. So the corpse is intact when they're sent to the lab for analysis. ZIP scientists Tom Agnew and Jenny Dent investigate the history of every rat that is trapped.
Each rat that we trap in a box is almost like a crime scene for us, so we get the most amount of information out of it as possible to try and help us plan our next move. Jenny's going to give it an autopsy today. We'll be able to tell maybe it's come across the river, maybe it's survived our original toxin operation, so there's so much information we can gain from just one.
So first up, we're going to have a look at...
After checking its approximate age, the team dissect its liver to see if the rat consumed any toxic pellets.
Yeah, it's definitely a female rat, and she's 200 grams. The females are a real big issue for us if they do get into the clean side of our block, because they have that breeding potential, so it can cause a huge population explosion pretty quickly. So we can look at the breeding history of the females. It tells us some real interesting information.
To find out if the rat crossed the river, they remove its whiskers and use ultraviolet microscopes to identify if it has chemicals from the mayonnaise. In another room, wild rats kept in captivity are used to test new traps and toxins. While ZIP has learnt a lot about a predator's movement in wild areas, big questions linger in the quest to kill all pests.
I think one of the most important things that we don't yet know is how we might be able to suppress predator breeding, so stop rats or stop stoats being able to breed. And so there's a whole lot of hormones and chemicals that control those processes, and so we may be able to tap into animals' biology on that level to improve what we're currently doing.
In the Southern Alps, ZIP has proven it can remove predators from large, remote, harsh landscapes. Through such work, Al Bramley is confident that New Zealand can lead the world in conservation and pest control.
Is predator-free 2050 achievable?
Yeah, absolutely. The strides we've made in the last couple of years, we absolutely think now we can do it. And now it's a matter of putting the right focus in to finish the job, and then will the funding come in order to scale it. So predator-free 2050 is the opportunity to restore the majority of our biodiversity. This is our opportunity to reset it and enable our wildlife to flourish.
A few hours' drive from ZIP's research sites, the Okarito Lagoon is a waterbird wonderland. Paula Sheridan has worked on these lakes as a tour operator for 15 years. She says Al Bramley's initiatives are desperately needed to bring more bird life back to New Zealand.
I think it's the make or break. This ZIP program, it was crucial to go with something big and bold like this. You can't just keep doing a little bit here and a little bit there, because the species are just going to start to drop away and we'll never see them again.
These wetlands are a vital feeding ground for thousands of wading birds on the South Island.
It's one of those last special places. Every day I'm amazed. Every single trip I come out here, I'm amazed. And I think it's just because it's such a untouched area.
Many bird species here are vulnerable because they're confined to small pockets of New Zealand. If pests take over their habitat, it will be catastrophic.
We're really fortunate to have a really intact ecosystem where these birds are still relatively abundant, but it's fragile. There is definitely a silent plague, if you will, going on in the bush around us.
The dramatic landscapes here are a draw card for alpine adventurers and nature lovers. Seeing unique creatures is a huge part of that experience. For those who value New Zealand's beauty, the vision to remove all predators by 2050 can't fail.
I think New Zealand would be a very different place without its iconic species that you can't see anywhere else in the world. And if we start to lose that, we start to lose our identity.